Calling this meeting to order, 5:03 PM, Monday, August 8th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kong,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Mohovi,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ellis is absent. Mayor Schwartz.
Here.
Thank you.
Any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move into closed session. Public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957, Title Police Chief.
Karen Kong, it says you will be late
I
for the
know.
5 PM. start.
You didn't, Okay. I'm opening the session at 6:01 PM, Monday, August 8th, 2022. Our invocation will be given by Kate Hunt of the United Methodist Church.
Thank you. Let us be in a presence of prayer. Dear wise and holy one, as we begin the work of this council, we pause in recognition of all that has been provided. We give thanks for this community and for all who dedicate their time and energy to lead in the management of our shared resources. Bless our time. Give the leaders of this community the wisdom and grace to engage in fruitful and honest dialogue and to make decisions that will serve the greatest good for all members of this community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kong,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ellis is absent. Mayor Schwartz.
Here.
Thank you.
Public comment. Notice to the public, this time is set aside to receive public comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. When recognized by the mayor, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under California law, the city council is prohibited from generally discussing or taking action on items not included in the agenda. However, the city council may briefly respond to comments or questions from members of the public. Therefore, the city council will listen to all public comment, but will not generally discuss the matter or take action on it. We have any public comment? Okay. There's nothing to report on closed session. And then we'll move on to presentations. We have a presentation tonight from the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District on wildfire smoke monitoring, presented by Great Basin Air Unified Control Officer Phil Cadieux.
Good evening, Bishop City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to be here tonight to tell you about Great Basin's wildfire smoke monitoring program. It's a program we're pretty excited about. And so the opportunity to share that and what we do with you and the public, our constituents here in the city of Bishop, is important to us. Just a brief little history on the how and why we got started our air monitoring program. And then Kim, our research systems analyst, is going to actually give the presentation and talk about all the details of that program. So the program started about 20 years ago, and it started at Owens Lake with the largest source of air pollution in the nation. And when we were building a dust control project with DWP and identifying source areas, we had very high elevated PM10 concentrations to impact public health significantly. And we needed a way to notify staff, consultants, and the public of where and when these episodes were happening. It was in about 2012 that the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, reached out to Great Basin and notified us that we had to actually develop an emergency episode plan because of the levels of significant harm of PM10 in the area. It was in Code of Federal Regulation and something that we needed to do, so we rose to the occasion. And with this emergency episode rule and plan, there were 2 specific things that we had to do. One was to notify the public and have a mechanism of doing that. And the other one was to provide recommendations of what to do, how to avoid it or how to reduce your exposure. So in 2014, when we got our first portable PM2.5 monitor to deploy for local wildfire, which we started experiencing more frequently and in higher severity, it was actually quite natural for the district to buy additional portable monitors that measured 2.5, which actually is the pollutant more harmful to human health and wildfire. And then I'd say by about 2018-19, we really had a program rolled out and had portable monitors filling in the holes in our communities in Yamona and Alpine County, where we didn't have permanent fixed regulatory monitors that normally measure PM10. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kim and let you take it away.
Thanks for having us here today. We're hopeful to share information about smoke before the smoke season starts this year so that folks can take steps to protect themselves. we have a little presentation. Great, thank you. So we work here in Bishop, and we also have an office in Keeler, but we cover 3 counties, Inyo, Mono, and Alpine counties. Lots of communities, and we're a relatively small staff of just over 20. And you can see us there. Like Phil was saying, we monitor a lot of PM10 dust size particles, but more recent years, a lot more PM 2.5 experiences during the summer and the smoke season. Next slide. Thank you. So we cover Inyo, Mono, Alpine County, and I just wanted to show a few of the monitors. Here in the picture, you may see them around town. We have one out on Line Street. If you're out at the White Mountain Research Station, you can see it there from Line. We have the other one in this picture is in Mammoth, and then a portable monitor there in the bottom right. In addition to particulate matter, which is mostly what we're concerned about in our 3 counties, we also monitor some gaseous pollutants. So when we're talking about dust and smoke and the size of it, I wanted to show a little picture here. What you can see is about the size of an average human hair. When we're talking about PM10, we're looking at about a fifth of the size of a human hair, so quite small. And then when we get into 2.5, we're cutting that down again in a quarter. So really tiny particles that can get really deeply into our lungs and have impacts to our lungs, our bloodstream, pregnant women, et cetera. So wanted to talk about just how tiny they are and how deep they can get into our bodies. So what do we do when there's a wildfire as a district? This is the fire we had just a few months ago, the airport fire that burned from Bishop down to Big Pine. It started 100 meters from our site in Bishop out at the White Mountain Research Station. So we were seeing some pretty big impacts at the get-go. Go ahead. Actually, let's go back one. Sorry. Thank you. So in the last 5 years, that was kind of a smaller fire. We had some impacts for a short time, but over the last 5 years, we've been seeing increasing mega fires. So 12 of the 20 largest wildfires took place during the last 5 seasons. And of the top 10 on the list in California, 8 of those happened in the last 5 years. So the impacts that we're feeling and seeing and talking about as a community are not, they're not new, but they're bigger, they're longer, and they're more extensive, which is one of the reasons why we are taking steps as an agency to get more information out to folks, and hopefully helping the communities come up with steps they can take within our communities and as individuals. So one of the things that Great Basin does is we have permanent monitoring stations throughout Inyo and Mono County. In Alpine County, we have 1 meteorological station, but no permanent PM particulate matter stations. When we collect that data comes through our systems and then gets pushed out to many other places to be utilized. So if you are seeing an AQI on your computer, an air quality index, or you're looking at the AQI Nowcast, maybe to make decisions about going inside or outside, or airnow.gov, or some of the websites, all of this air pollution data is coming from the same source. It is displayed in different ways. So often at the district, we like to look at these numbers in raw concentrations because the weather conditions here in the Owens Valley and in Mono can rapidly change. But community-wide and nationwide, there's been a push towards the AQI Nowcast, which is a calculation and averaging of over 12 hours, which kind of gives a different number. So there has been some confusion in recent years over why is your number different than that number? Which number should I use? That question isn't always clear. We did list some reasons you might want to use them on this slide, which are available to the public on the City of Bishop's website if you want to read about them. But what we did want to hammer home is that all the data comes from the same source and then just is calculated and displayed in different ways. And if we're experiencing long periods of smoke, that averaging can be really accurate. But if we have an event that comes in rapidly and clears rapidly, it may be better to look at single concentration hours when you're making a decision about how to act. how to be outside or hiking. And we are always available at Great Basin if anybody has questions to give us a call, send us an email, and we're happy to talk through which might be the best tool to use on any given day with the current conditions. So some of the increasing things that Phil mentioned that we have been doing at the district in recent years, we are deploying emergency monitors. So these are called EBAMs. They also go through our system and feed into things like AirNow and the AirNow calculations. So when we recognize that a particular community is being impacted but doesn't have a permanent monitor, we can deploy one of these with about an hour or two lead time plus drive time. So currently we have 5 EBAMs. 4 are deployed right now in a couple in northern Mono County, 1 in Mammoth, 1 in Alpine County, so that we can kind of spread where we don't have permanent monitors, we can see what's going on. We're pretty lucky here in Inyo County that we do have a pretty good dispersion of monitors that can give us an idea of what's going on. Additionally, we put out health advisories both on our website, and we have an email push list that folks can sign up for. Historically, we were sending out a health advisory for smoke whenever thresholds were met. With the increase of smoke over the last 3 years, it was saturating the public to send out emails so often. So in the last 2 years, we have transitioned to a weekly email that will go out when there are impacts in the community. Whenever those impacts get hit, we'll send the email out, and it'll probably cover a much longer time frame, but give things that people can do to take action. So if you're interested in signing up, you can visit Great Basin's website and sign up there for health advisories, and we'll email them out to you guys. And then we wanted to share some of the other resources that we use in our office that you can also use. So attached to your guys' board report is a list of resources with the most useful ones starred. They're all useful, but it's a long list. So we wanted to highlight the best ones. So if anybody's interested, you can get that in the board packet or on the City of Bishop's website. And it will list a whole bunch of websites people can visit to make decisions for themselves, some models that we use, important places to check air quality. Additionally, you can visit our website, and when you get to the homepage of our website, what you're going to see is if there's a smoke event going on, you'll see a red button that says active smoke. You can click there, and it's going to take you to a whole series of resources, what fires are impacting our area, links to models and tools that can be used to make decisions for your health. One of my favorite to give out is an assessment of the visuals. So how far can you see? And that'll help you to make decisions about your health if there isn't a monitor in your community, to help empower decision-making if you're in the backcountry or those sorts of things on what kind of activity you can take. So if you have any questions when you're visiting our website, please feel free to give us a call or email our office, and we're happy to help. So what can we do for ourselves to reduce exposure to wildfire smoke? The smoke is here. It's going to stay over the next handful of years, decades, unknown. We may have some good years. In particular, 2019 was a great year. So far this year, we're on to a slow start, which we're happy about. But the smoke will come. And so there are some steps you can take. This is a pretty heavy slide. But overall, what you should do is know your air quality conditions. We've given you some resources where you can look to find out what's going on. And then once you know if there is smoke in the area, you probably will know just from your own nose. You want to take steps to reduce exposure. So go inside, make clean spaces in your home, do less activity outside. It might feel like you must mow your lawn on that Saturday, but if it grows a little extra, it's not going to hurt. Then third, take steps to improve your indoor air quality. So we can do things like not frying foods, not lighting candles, not vacuuming. And that's going to reduce particulates in your home. And then even more importantly, for people who are at risk, such as children or pregnant women or people who have health conditions, is to consider creating a safe space, a room with an air purifier or a homemade air purifier, which can be made out of box fans with filters on them. If you have air conditioning in your home, it's best to turn that on and set it to recirculate indoors. Swamp coolers do nothing to keep particulates out, and many of us, including myself, have swamp coolers, so it can be a hard choice. But if you can create a room that has clean air quality, you can reduce your exposure, especially if you're at high risk. And there's a great video that I posted on the link of resources from the EPA that tells you the best steps to create a clean room in your home. So, and then lastly, and most importantly, we know our body is best. So listen to your body. If you're having impacts, if you're feeling impacts, call your health provider, take steps to find a clean space. Maybe that means visiting a friend in another town. Maybe that means finding a friend who does have air conditioning. We all are most familiar with our own bodies and how we're feeling. It's really important to listen to those cues. So we're not coming to share too much data today. We collect a lot of data at our office, but I did want to show some of the trends we're seeing. This slide shows the air quality of the entire year over the last decade, a little more than a decade. With green being good air quality, yellow being moderate, and then anything above that kind of having some impacts. Unhealthy for sensitive groups in orange, unhealthy in red, and getting up to very unhealthy and hazardous. This does show the worst air quality from any conditions. So in Inyo County, we more often see impacts from dust than actual smoke. So what a lot of that yellow is dust impacts. So it's important to, we're talking about smoke today, but there are cumulative impacts over the whole time. What you can see in this slide is 2020, which was a particularly awful smoke year and the most acres burned on record in California history. You can see we had a lot of rough days there. So we can see these last 5 years, those conditions changing. 2019, you can see we had very little smoke impacts, and that's reflected here as well. So I'm going to show just some real quick Bishop air quality. This is only during the smoke season. And so we start tracking our smoke data around June 1st, and then we cut off that data whenever smoke seems to have gone away. We used to kind of have a cutoff date, and the last few years have stretched that pretty far from what we were originally tracking for smoke season, including all the way out into October in 2020, which was unfortunate. So what you can see there is a count of the number of days over the smoke season being measured as June 1st to whenever the smoke clears here in Bishop. Now, one thing that's important to know is our Bishop monitor is actually out at the White Mountain Research Station. We brought it in for a different purpose than community monitoring. It's here to be a rural monitor to compare background concentrations against more urban places. So that's why it's placed so far out. And we often see a really interesting microclimate here where the smoke can either push up towards the west and be hit much harder than our site out there, or it pushes towards the east and it looks way worse there than it is here in town. So we'll go to the next slide. So some exciting news we have for the town of Bishop is that we are going to be putting in a community PM 2.5 monitor just over by the elementary school. We've got a site selected and we're doing the steps to get that installed. So we hope to have a little more accurate information for within the town, not out past the river, and see what those differences show. And then some other exciting future projects here in Inyo County are that the County of Inyo put in for some grants to purchase industrial air purifiers that they'll be able to deploy to the community centers throughout Inyo County, Big Pine, Independence. So when we do have an event that goes for days and people are experiencing hardship being in their homes, maybe making decisions about heat and cool and smoke exposure, there will be some locations to go for at least a chunk of the day to get some clean air space. And we're really excited about having worked with them and them taking on that project out of public health. So we wanted to share about that. And with that, Phil and I are here if you guys have any questions for us.
I just have a quick basic question. On your chart, there was one column I didn't know what it meant, USG.
Unhealthy for sensitive groups. Thanks for
Okay.
asking. Yeah, it's a really long, so most of the names are really short, so you can fit them nicely on graphics.
All the other words I knew.
Yeah, unhealthy for
What that
sensitive
was.
groups. And to be sensitive would be children, folks with health conditions, pregnant women are especially sensitive. So knowing if you're sensitive or not is important. And in addition, in recent years, they've added outdoor workers, right? Because you're having much more exposure being outside day in, day out. So maybe if you are healthy, but you're exposing yourself to more than the average citizen, that has been added in as well as a consideration.
Are there monitors you can recommend for indoor spaces so you know if your indoor space is healthy or not?
There are monitors, right? They're user grade monitors that you can purchase, personal monitors you can put in your backyard or in your home. We don't recommend any in particular out of the district, but you could search user smoke monitor. And
Okay.
I would imagine that one would come up at the front of that list.
Got it.
A lot of the indoor air purifiers also have a gauge on
Oh,
it.
they-
Yeah,
gauge
so
on
if you
them?
purchase one, they'll have the color of the AQI on there, and then
Oh,
you
ours
can
does
just hear it
not.
when it goes off.
Okay.
It starts buzzing and then you know. But yeah, there are indoor monitors about $150, $200 that you can put
Okay.
in and get an idea about.
Get an air purifier.
I have one.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a monitor.
Oh,
Yeah.
mine has the
Little symbol.
an LED. Karen, you said you know all the other words in there.
Did know all the
What's an EBAM?
Oh, I was looking at the color chart. Healthy,
Yeah.
those things.
All right, then maybe we'll have Kim. tell
EVAMs are emergency monitors. Let's
us.
see.
What does it stand?
Great question. So emergency beta attenuation monitor. Yeah. And so it's a specific type of monitor that is actually looking at the beta attenuation on this little sphere, and that's how it reads how much. There are different types of monitors. We also have some that measure via light scatter and some that measure via weight. So
One comment, I don't know, that might be helpful to the public. As you pointed out, swamp coolers just blow the air straight from the outside. So any particular matter is going to be blown straight into your house. But of course, smoke season is when it's the hottest time of year. So I actually took the gray out of my swamp cooler and put an air filter on it. And yes, it decreases the airflow, but it's at least a lot cleaner inside.
yeah, it is a tool, and there is some really excited. I'm really excited because I have a swamp cooler. Excited new research coming out of the Central Valley. We'll also use quite a few swamp coolers to work on methods in the design of swamp coolers to filter, because this isn't just a problem that's going to go away, and people obviously like swamp coolers. So I was excited to see. I don't remember who gave it out. It was a university, but a couple $100,000 going toward research on swamp coolers and particulate pollution. So hopefully we'll have some better tips
For-
than yeah.
Just do it.
Just stick it on there with duct tape. It's not a bad
I
idea.
put it on the inside.
Yeah, yeah.
So even the airflow is pushing it against. it.
Yeah.
So you don't need as much tape.
There we go.
No, great presentation, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us. Yeah.
You have time for your two projects that are going, the new monitor and the.
Yeah, so the new monitor is in progress. I didn't want to make any promises. It won't be in for this smoke season, that's for sure. We are also lucky to have the Tribes monitor here in town, sometimes on, sometimes off, and often will feed into the AQI readings. So we count on them a lot, but we don't have control over when they're pushing data or when they're not. But hopefully by next smoke season, we'll have a monitor here in town. I'm hopeful. And then the clean air shelters, those grants went, it was a grant process. And so those applications went in maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. And I think we have a great, strong case for getting them here. Ours was a pretty small ask, and we're a very heavily impacted community. So
Thank you very much.
And one last question I have, can you, so I moved here a long time ago, and whenever the wind was blowing from the south, it was always pretty horrible from the Owens Dry Lake. And can you comment on, I don't see as many of those days anymore, so on the efforts that you guys made and the improvements. that
yeah, I
you've
might
made.
let Phil answer that one, but we do have lots of great improvements going on down at Owens Lake. We do see from both wind directions, anytime there's a strong wind coming from the north or a strong wind coming from the south, we can see dust impacts, but I'll let Phil answer on the first question.
Yeah, so there's been significant reductions in pollution from the south, specifically at Owens Lake. We have over 99% control at the lake with 47.8 square miles of controls in place. There are transient sources that tend to show up, like some fires along the river corridors that have happened in years past. But as far as Owens, we're pretty much where we want to be at the finish line. So
And do you know if, I mean, it's of course anecdotal and we're dealing with low number statistics, but there's of course a common knowledge around town that like a lot of people who grew up here end up developing lung cancer at a higher rate than other areas in the nation. Is there any validity to that?
definitely higher health risks because it's a smaller population. It's hard to do any health studies. But back in the late 90s, the district did a study on hospital visitations, and those are dramatically increased during wind-driven dust events.
Any further questions? Thank you so much. Really
Thank you
appreciate
very
the
much.
time,
Yeah.
the presentation. Yes, we have some public comments from Warren Alsop. Please come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council, for letting me speak. Mine's going to be a little bit different than Phil's is. We've known each other for a long time. But anyway, it's going to be giving you some different facts, I think. I didn't hear Phil too well because I got 2 hearing aids and I don't hear well. So anyway, I want to give you some background about me. I spent 30 years with the Department of Fish and Game, retired as a warden. I had, my district was Inyo Mono counties. My job was to protect the environment and the wildlife in this area. I've lived here most of my adult life. So I've had a pretty good background as far as year to year to year to year. And the issue of this smoke is something that I've been involved with for about 12 years. It started when we started having smoke all summer. Most of the summer you'd have smoke. And if you lived here any period of time, you know that's a possibility and a fact. So anyway, I went with Linda Alcalarias, and also should say I was a county supervisor in the early 90s. So Linda Alcalarias took my place, and I went with her, me and the wife went with her to Lone Pines and to meet about the fire issue with the Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service. At that meeting, it was interesting to find out because everything that I had read in the papers and stuff said it was always a controlled burn. So let me explain to you how their policy is. If it's a lightning strike, they have the Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service can either put it out or let it burn. And the reason, I understand the reason for it and why they want to do that. But we have experienced many fires here, the Mammoth Fire, the fire down in Olancha. A lot of these fires have gotten out. Last year, we burned all the sequoias over the other side. What happens, the fire, they don't put it out, and all it takes is one bucket from a helicopter to put out a tree. But they let these things burn, and we've been suffering now for a long, long time. So that's basically what's going on with the Park Service and the Forest Service. And we've had times here when I couldn't see 50 yards, and I'm sure if you've lived here any length of time, you've experienced that. And sometimes we've had all summer full of smoke. So what's happening? Everything on the west side, they're letting these lightning strikes go. And like I say, I understand the reason, trying to get rid of the brush and all that. But they're not thinking about the Eastern Sierra and our air quality and our people coming here to see a beautiful country. That sometimes we don't have that in the whole summer. So I'm sure you're aware of that. But my question would be for Phil is, I went down twice for the board, two to three times, at least twice, to the Board of Supervisors and brought this issue up just like I'm bringing it up to you. I wanted to get somebody, and I had a fellow in Mammoth that was doing the same thing, an ex-city councilman up there, John Eastman. He was doing it in Mono County and I was doing it here. I went before the Board of Supervisors twice on this smoke issue and nothing. There was nothing happened. I was trying to get some support to try to change the federal government's policy of letting a lightning strike burn. But I've never been
Also,
able
your-
to,
Your 3 minutes
I've
is
never
up.
been able to get anywhere with it. I didn't appear before this city council because I was a county resident.
Mr. Alstorp, your 3 minutes is up. But thank you very much for your comments.
Maybe.
She said your 3 minutes is up.
I know.
And thank you so much for your comments.
But I appreciate that. And I guess I'd like to, if anybody has any questions to ask me, I'd appreciate that, answering your questions. But this is a different side than what you heard before. And my concern is we have an outfit here that's supposed to be guarding our air. They've had at Mammoth, you can't have a fireplace, wood smoke burning certain times of the year. They stopped that. And so it's the thing is not working like it should. And it's because of the federal government, and everybody's afraid of the federal government. And that's not, shouldn't be the case.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to department reports. Jeff Griffiths is not here tonight. And so we'll start with Police Chief Richard Standridge.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks for your time this evening. I know you'd been presented this end of month report already in writing as an attachment to the agenda. Just kind of talk about some of the things that we've had going on the last month. We were able to participate at the First Responders Day with Toyabe. And as a matter of fact, we were just invited back for another walk event that'll be coming up shortly. We're having a meeting related to that this week to kind of find out the particulars. National Night Out happened last Tuesday night, and it was bigger this year than last year, so it's kind of gaining steam. I think folks are getting used to it being at the park here versus somewhere else. Had a good turnout from the Sheriff's Department, Probation, California Highway Patrol, able to serve over 100 hot dogs to folks. It was a really good event. We're already talking about plans to make it a little bit bigger next year. So with that being said, we also have Alina Dondero, which has started as our new employee, doing a great job. Really happy to have her on board. Oscar Lopez takes off to the academy this coming week, and we're excited to see him get started in his career and get back here and start serving the community. Cody Lawson, who's on training, is doing very well. And as I had kind of mentioned to some of the council members earlier in conversation, we've really been focusing on speeding, as we've written a couple of tickets that have been in excess of 75 miles an hour on some of our city roadways. So with that, does council have any questions of me related to the end of month report?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Okay, Community Services Manager Dan McElroy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You also have my written report in front of you, just some highlights from the community services over the last couple weeks. If you guys are not aware, but our summer camps are wrapping up or are wrapped up as of last week. Our main focus in the next couple weeks is prepping for our after school program, which is always full with a waiting list. So getting ready for that, as well as a full gymnastics season, fall season in our gymnasium. So looking forward to having Francisco back, as well as adding a new gymnastics instructor as well. So we should be able to have a full gymnastics season there. As you guys may know too, as a lot of your kids and everything participate in AYSO soccer. Fall season starts on the 20th of August at the city park, and practices start on the 15th. So getting ready for AYSO soccer. Also been looking forward to some community events this fall as we prepare for the WIC walk on the 20th. And of course, the Labor Day Art in the Park, which will take place from that Thursday all the way through Monday at the city park. And lastly, is just continuing to, of course, we have members from the public here for the mountain bike park, as well as work on a community garden MOU And of course, we received our insurance information for the, we'll say vandalism to the front restrooms. I'm looking forward to starting that process with a formal bid process. Do you guys have any questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Associate Planner, Economic Development Coordinator, Elaine Kabala.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I too will just pull out some highlights from the written report that you have in your agenda. First, as I think you're probably aware, the Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit for the conversion of Sterling Heights to workforce housing. So that's 69 units with 75 parking spaces. We did not receive any appeals on that. Also wanted to give the council a heads up that I'm going to start enforcing the signage ordinance and looking at some of the particularly problematic signs that are out of compliance and sending them notices on that soon in case I hear about that. Also wanted to let you know the good news that on August 1st, we received our compliance letter from Housing and Community Development certifying our housing element. So we made it over that hurdle, but the next step will be actually implementing the plan. And the letter from HCD is included in your report. You might look at some of the policies that they pulled out for us to focus on in particular. And then finally wanted to let you know that through Inyo County and originally through the Bakersfield Small Business Development Center, which does small business development work in the Eastern Sierra region, we were connected to a venture capital group who is focused on driving particular investments into the Eastern Sierra. They've come to Bishop and Mammoth twice and met with Mr. Deshawn and myself. We walked around, took an afternoon and did a tour of downtown, looking at different opportunities that they could be interested in the future. So I hope to come back to the council with good news on that partnership in the future. Happy to take any questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
I have a
Yep.
question. On the, I guess with regards to the response from HCD, I find it interesting. Like, I mean, how do we address some of these responses where they're talking about we need to commit to developing a schedule for the transfer of land of DWP parcels when that's not really within our power to do?
And I think we had that conversation when I came before the council with the last housing element, which is that there are certain things that they are going to have legislative authority to enforce. I think the rest of this is just very firm encouragement. But I think it's in your agenda this evening to initiate the process with some of those DWP properties. And so long as we've, documented in 8 years a consistent effort towards implementing on some of those policies, for the time being, where we are legislatively, that should satisfy HCD. And I think there are other policies in there that I'll look forward to working with your council to really enact towards different strategies to alleviate some of our housing concerns.
And then the other question that I have is, do you know if the county managed to get theirs through yet?
I don't know if the county did or not. It seems like the HCD sort of put everyone through 2 cycles of revisions and now is issuing letters. And in conversations I've had with their planning department, it sounds like they got, a whole bunch of responses back from HCD and they said, okay, fine, whatever you want. And so I think they're well on the road to compliance.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious because I think there was a requirement that they were placing about looking at vacant properties. So I was just curious to see what.
That's right. Mr. Griffiths brought that up last. And I can confirm that.
Yeah.
With the county for you.
We should find out what's happening there. Thanks.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much for sending out the letters about the signage ordinance. I've been having people have been asking me, you just passed that thing. Are you going to do anything about it? So I just love that I can say to them, yes, we're doing it and it's gonna happen. And thank you so much for what you do.
Well, it's my pleasure and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, City Administrator and Public Works Director Destin Deshawn.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. So the first thing I'd like to report on is we finally were able to put together a housing roundtable with all the local agency partners. We had the Forest Service, the BLM, Northern Inyo Hospital, Inyo County, and the Bishop Tribe all participating in a meeting. You know, obviously, there's no answers that were found in that meeting, but it was the start of discussions to find out exactly what are the needs of each of those agencies, and not just employees, but what kind of housing do they need? How much of it do they need? Interesting to find out that the Forest Service has between 50 and 75 positions open and vacant that they cannot fill due to housing issues, you know, just in the region in general. But it was a good meeting. We left a lot of questions to be answered, and then we'll probably try to meet again in 2 months. And some of the questions that I posed to the group was, who has property that they already currently own that can be used, including the tribe, that could be used for housing? And so none of them really were ready for that question. And so they're going to come back with that answer, which was fair. We're just trying to think outside of the box right now. Intentionally left LEDWP out of that meeting because I didn't want to make it just about them. They're working with us as best they can right now. Made offers to a public works director, nearing completion of that, and should have that agreement done. Senior planner, a conditional offer was made. And see what else we have here. Oh, so everybody will know the sidewalk project along Bellfield 1 or Horace Bright Avenue will start next Monday. So you'll start seeing activity out there this week, construction, staking. We tried to put it off until swim lessons ended and wouldn't be such an inconvenience to the park. And then you'll probably see the public works crew out there making sidewalk repairs. They started on the west side of town and trying to knock out some of our more dangerous issues around the school before school started. But they will continue to work. They're moving over to the east side of town now. So definitely making some progress on there. I'll work in-house. And other than that, unless you have any questions of me, that's all I have.
Nothing from me. Anyone? Okay,
No, thank you.
fantastic.
Oh, wait, one last thing I forgot. I thought you were doing that, Robin. So it's worth noting that for everyone, the city of Bishop and Robin's efforts in workers' comp and reducing claims and having a safe workplace, the city of Bishop was recognized by California Joint Powers Insurance Authority as one of the leaders in not so much as not having injuries, but preventing injuries and creating education and keeping our people trained. So I think that's a big one because that's keeping our employees at work and making our entire staff more successful. So thank you,
Sure,
Robin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well done.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Notice to the public, all matters under the consent calendar are considered routine by the city and will be acted on by one motion. Is there any public comments? Any discussion?
I really appreciate some of the letters that are on here that we sent out in the last few weeks. So kudos for that.
Would you like to make a motion then?
I would. I will make a motion that we accept the consent calendar as is.
Second that.
Okay, call for a vote.
Yes.
Councilmember Kong,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Mahovey,
Yes.
Mayor Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Moving on to a public hearing and action item, public hearing and first reading, introduction of a proposed ordinance relating to graffiti abatement. Police Chief Standridge.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. If I can, I'd like to talk a little bit about our first reading here for our graffiti ordinance. I mean, it's been no secret since I got here. We talked about this almost a year ago and then recently it kind of came to a head with the vandalism in the bathroom. So I thought it was an appropriate time to take a look at bringing back our graffiti ordinance. So what we plan on accomplishing is basically taking an opportunity to get the park back, keep it cleaned up, keep our restroom cleaned up. And we want to go ahead and address the issue of graffiti, which we know graffiti is committed primarily by persons under the age of 18. And so we wanted to develop this ordinance both as a way to allow business owners to help us by locking up their spray paint, and we'll develop a city ordinance for that. One of our local businesses has already done that just in anticipation of the ordinance, and they did it quite a few months ago. City Administrator Deshawn and I reached out to the other businesses and met with them a few months prior, and they were all willing to be compliant in that fact and help us out. And as a matter of fact, if this ordinance makes it past the first reading and then gets adopted, at some point, I may reach out to Manor, the Manor Market area and their hardware store over there to see if they'd be willing to work with us as a partner and kind of, even though they don't have to, but, you know, be a good neighbor and go along with us and help lock up theirs as well, which would help prevent some graffiti that they have also in their area. So with that, I've kind of determined we're about 40,000 or more in the hole in graffiti damage. And this ordinance, which is attached, council I know has had the opportunity to read it. It's been reviewed by the city attorney. And I'm asking that council approve the proposed first reading and we start moving forward in enacting a graffiti ordinance in the city of Bishop.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and call and have a council discussion. Steven, do you have anything to say?
Me?
No, I didn't.
Never. I mean, yes, I agree that graffiti is a problem. It definitely creates blight in the city. It's not the image that we want to portray to our visitors coming through. I know this item was brought up before to us, and at the time, I definitely had some trouble with some of the wording with it, in that it places a lot of burden on young members of the public and basically our youth to be able to. The previous version almost read as if they were guilty until proven innocent, and I don't agree with that that kind of approach. However, there were modifications that were made to this to address some of those concerns. I definitely agree that vandalism in particular is becoming more and more of a problem, and it's starting to hit our bottom line. So I'm happy with how this version came up. However, I'm only a little hesitant in that having lived in New York City for many years, I'm definitely cognizant and aware of the big stop and frisk policies that they had up there. And I trust in our police department that they wouldn't use this as an avenue to go down that route. But the one thing I will say is to all members of the public is that if you start seeing that happen, reach out to us, and we will definitely address that and revisit this sort of a thing, because we definitely need to do something about graffiti, but I don't want it to be at the risk of the civil liberties of our youth.
And council member, I agree with you wholeheartedly. One of the things, we've kind of discussed at length over various times is there's no way to make a perfect ordinance. Right. And I appreciate the fact that you have the trust in me as your police chief to work with my folks under my command, and that they will be trained properly and they'll use this tool as necessary, not as an end-all be-all. One of the things I can assure you is that it won't be under my tenure. It will not be used that way. And as I've said, since day one I've got here, my door is open. My phone always gets answered. I welcome any member of the public who thinks that they are not being treated fairly. If we do utilize this ordinance, I'm always willing to sit down and talk. And you folks sitting up there on the dais have the prerogative and the authority, if it is not used appropriately, to remove it from my disposal. And I would encourage you to do so if it is not used the way it should be. So I'm willing to take that challenge today, and I'm just asking that council move this forward and get back to cleaning up our park and our buildings, and we do it as a community, not just a police department or a city council.
Chief, I like to say that I agree with some of the comments made by Councilmember Mahovic, but I think it's a very professional and within the law, the ordinance proposed. And I can add that neither Bishop is New York or our police department, and I don't think we have the same issues. So, and I do trust on our police department to handle it well and appropriately. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So I just had a couple of things that I wanted to address. You know, when this first got brought up to us almost a year ago, I had some pretty big concerns about the wording. We've talked about it. And I kind of hoped, in my Pollyanna way, that just talking about a graffiti ordinance would sort of put pressure on the community to knock it off. And obviously that has not happened. And so we're going to need to, in my opinion, we're going to need to move forward with this. I really appreciate, and I'm putting my trust in you and the department that this is not going to be a stop and frisk situation.
Sure.
I had a couple of just logistical questions as well. I don't know if it's necessary when we talk about what structures are to put benches in that, or if not to be limited to is enough of the wording, just because I see graffiti on benches and stickers and those kind of things. And so just wanted to throw that out there. It's not a do or die situation for me. But I was wondering about the wording of section 8.36.080, the graffiti removal from private property by the city. First off, I'm working under the assumption that this will only happen after the section before takes place, that the 3-day warning will happen. There will be no response, and then we'll step in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's and not to be too dollars and cents about this, but there's no money associated with this. Are we going to be billing the private owners for our work?
My understanding is we can do it for the cost of our time, materials. And just to assure you what that primarily is, I haven't had any issues with any of our current business owners in the city as far as cleaning up. What we're looking at are those that are owned by our out of town folks who really own the buildings, but don't necessarily have that connection to the community and understand at any given moment how it is impacting, our quality of life. And so that's where that gives us the tool to really reach out to them to kind of put the pressure, hey, you need to get this done.
And so I guess my question to legal is that, do we need to put in there that we're going to charge them for the cost of this?
No, in fact, it would probably be more problematic to try and chart out the degree and scope of whether we're talking about one little tag on something or an entire wall that's tagged that requires, and so it would be charged in a way that we would charge any kind of abatement of a public nuisance that the city would have to go in and do, which is we're authorized to charge kind of time and materials and keep a record like that.
Okay, so it's covered in that sort of language. Great. That was my only worry, because we're talking about a budgetary reason to do this, and then I wasn't sure if it needed to be in there or not. So great. I'm thrilled.
That was my question.
The only other question I have is, and maybe Dan is the right person to address this. There was talk in the past about having a wall at the park that people could paint at. Is that still happening?
It is. You can come up too, Dan, but I was gonna just go ahead and talk about, I was gonna mention that here at the end, that we still are working towards that.
Okay.
And now that this is gonna kind of move that along, in my opinion, and I think Dan will agree, is a little faster option.
Looked at kind of some multiple spots, the chief and I, of course, there's the obvious spot, which is the Carl's Jr. wall, but that is actually owned by Carl's Jr. So that's going to be a tough one. So we looked at areas in the park. There's already what we call the jib wall that's already in the skate park. And thinking about doing multiples of those within the skate park. It will replace the fencing, but it's also the one that's in there is just plywood. So I'd like to do something a little more substantial in there and something that can be cleaned and painted if it does become an issue and removed. So there is an option to do it within the skate park or within certain areas, but we got to be careful that we stay away from businesses as well. So.
And so under that program with this law, it would be the kind of thing that the person who's going to do it would have to go through an application process to get
Correct.
permission to go
Correct.
do it? Okay.
Correct. It would be considered a public art project or something that would be considered public art.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. Let me get there. I'd like to make a motion to approve the first reading and introduction of proposed ordinance by title only.
I'll second that.
Call for vote?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bishop, State of California, adding Chapter 36 to Title 8 of the City of Bishop Municipal Code relating to graffiti abatement. Councilmember Kong,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Hovey,
Yes.
Mayor Schwartz.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. First reading and introduction of a proposed ordinance relating to on-street parking regulations. You're up again.
Thank you for your time this evening, members of the public. So as we talked about since I've been hired here and we've done updates, monthly reports, things like that, parking is always an issue. I mean, we get calls daily about parking in the city of Bishop, abandoned vehicles, broken down vehicles, vehicles parked in red zones, handicap zones. The list goes on. So we currently have an ordinance in place that allows for us to go out and identify vehicles that have been parked in the same place for more than 72 hours and have not moved. And we have the authority at that point to remove them off the street. Where we're running into our biggest issue is our ordinance needs to be updated to be kind of more in line and more in compliance with what is standard throughout the state. There's been some case law in recent years that talks about if we actually mark tires on vehicles to identify if they've moved or not, that could potentially be a search and seizure issue. That law has not been technically enforced and enacted in California, but we know how that goes. At some point, it may or may not be, and I don't want to be the test case. So kind of what we go out and we have a mode to mark them at which it doesn't inhibit or touch anybody's vehicle with, chalk, which is standardly used. But at that same point, we do not have a means by identifying necessarily what would be considered significant movement, and our ordinance doesn't call for it. So what I'm asking for is for council to go ahead and take a look at updating our ordinance to where it states that a vehicle would need to be moved from its location where it's been over 72 hours and need to be moved 500 feet. And what that does, that requires the owner of that vehicle to make a significant movement, allows us to work with them and identify that significant movement to make sure we're not, moving a vehicle that has moved and come back, or one that we marked incorrectly, something of that nature. And it allows for us to be able to also work with those owners at the same time, but at the same time, keeping our streets clear for those people that need to park at their homes or their businesses and get customers inside. So with that, I'll submit to council if they have any questions for me.
The only question I have is, we have a lot of residences in our community that don't have on-site parking. And so we have in this ordinance the option, if we need to move to a permit, like for instance, let's say the new Sterling Heights, has some parking issues and someone on Pine Street doesn't have on-site parking. Will this give us the opportunity to potentially move to a permit system if needed?
Yes, it will. That's why we left that in there, because at some point, as tight as parking is, and maybe someday we go to even a change to our parking in the downtown area, it'll allow us some flexibility to separate what is what is, somebody's business parking that they're using as overflow in a neighborhood versus somebody who lives there and happens to have 2 or 3 people living in the house and they all have a car.
Thank you.
No, maybe per questions, per comment, can we community that this is not targeting homeowners who own more than one vehicle, and for some reason, one of those vehicles is parked in front of the residence for days or weeks, or maybe move once a week, so that we're not targeting those vehicles.
No, this is for the obvious things that, stick out. We're out doing our diligence and patrolling neighborhoods for safety. And at the same time, this allows us to address complaint-driven issues. So no, it's not that at all. I'm fully aware as a police chief of the parking constraints we have in the city of Bishop. But if I'm not diligent in keeping our streets clear of vehicles that shouldn't be out there, then I'm at the same time punishing those who are trying to just work and earn a living and have some guests over and enjoy their neighborhood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question, how did you arrive at the 500 feet mark? Is that something that's pretty standard throughout the state?
It is. Quite a few cities are going to that. There used to be a caveat in the vehicle code that talked about what significant movement is, and for whatever reason, it's been removed in recent years. So a lot of cities are going to a 500 feet because that kind of makes sure that somebody moves from one, block to another and actually shows significant movement in moving the vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this might be what precipitates doing a permit system if we find that a bunch of residents are dealing with a lot of this. But I do hope that it lessens the amount of time that your officers are spending dealing with people who will move a car that's full of cobwebs by 6 inches and call it moved.
Correct.
That's what's happening.
That is, and that I do want, for the public that watches this and listens to it, this is not a targeting issue. This is not a revenue issue. This is a quality of life issue. And it, like I said, it allows us to identify those that are just taking the opportunity to, kick the chalk off the ground and 6 inches forward. We go out and mark it again, they roll it six inches back. And so this is just another tool in the toolbox that if we have to get this extreme, it allows me to do so legally.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Council.
Any public comment? All right, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading and introduce the proposed ordinance by title only.
Second that.
Okay, call for a vote.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bishop, State of California, amending Section 10.28.220, 72-hour parking prohibited, to Chapter 10.28, stopping, standing, and parking of Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic of the Bishop Municipal Code relating to on-street parking regulations. Councilmember Kong?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Hovey?
Yes.
Mayor Schwartz?
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. Moving on to Bishop Bike Park Pilot Project, Bike Park Volunteer Handbook, and a resolution to approve and execute a proposed site license agreement with the Bishop Bike Park Group. Dan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight, I have a staff report. Briefly go over what is already that you guys have been presented with in your booklets. So the background and history, Henry Schober and Stephen Poole approached the Parks and Rec Commission and the City Council with an idea of creating a mountain bike skills course to encompass areas for all ages and all abilities. This pilot project idea was supported and the work was created to create a conceptual design. Sorry. The CEQA document has been filed and completed. In our analysis, the Bishop Bike Park completed the CEQA process and will build in phases and listed in the proposal in the attached. Sorry, my phone was going off my part. The volunteer handbook specific to the project has been put together to provide volunteers and staff with roles and responsibilities. Also as attached is the license agreement between the City of Bishop and the mountain bike volunteer group. As discussed with City Council in a previous meeting, the volunteers and staff have been in contact with the neighboring communities and members to mitigate any concerns. The economic impacts, the installation of a multi-aged, multi-skilled bike park within the city of Bishop will be available for locals and visitors. By creating a recreational space for visitors, it would give these users an option of recreating within the city of Bishop and not just in the outlying areas. The bike park would also have impact by users frequenting local businesses. The project is currently not in the budget. However, the project will be using donated funds with little impact to the city budget. Legal review, City Attorney Pucci has reviewed and find this item is recommended action complies with the law. And our recommendation tonight is council to consider to approve the bike park pilot project, approve the proposed resolution, and approve and execute the license agreement between the Bishop Bike Park Group and the city of Bishop by title only, and approve the proposed volunteer handbook. That's a lot of P's, sorry.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Please state your name and address and limit your time to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I am Henry Schober, and this is.
I'm Stephen Poole.
And so, since the last time we saw you, recently started a community group on Facebook, which has received a lot of support from many different, areas around Bishop and many different people who would like to join and support. We've gotten pledges of planning and other help from said Facebook group. One of them being a man who worked at the Mammoth Bike Park and is, very dedicated because he now has a little kid and moved to Big Pine recently and wants to help. So we have, actual safety precautions now and a guy who knows what he's doing when he's building. We've gotten permission from the Rotary Foundation to allow us to use their 501c3 as a source of holding our money, essentially. So when we receive a grant, we will give the money to them and use them essentially as our bank in a sense. And we will be reaching out to them soon for a donation, but that's beside the point. And our last and final thing is we have also reached out to DWP and also the BLM in search of resources, such as hosing material, wood, metal, any kind of thing we could use to help build the park. The only trouble we seem to have encountered at the moment that's kind of giving us a little bit of a wall is we're trying to find insurance carriers who can help us with workman's comp and helping us deal with liability insurance, as we cannot build the project without a group of people, but we cannot afford to pay all the people and guarantee their check.
Isn't workman's comp included in this volunteer program?
Solve a problem right now.
The workman's comp portion is included in there, but our requirement is the liability insurance. There's the $1 million and $2 million portion on there. So
I see. One question I have for you guys is, at the last meeting, there were some residents who expressed concern about it being in their backyard. And so I'm just curious, did you guys alter any of your plans to kind of address some of the things they were worried about?
So one of the concerns I believe last time was that it was, like you said, too close to the house. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give a little bit of a buffer between the bike park and the community garden. So that way there's, not too much racket and it'll still have enough space for all of our fun features.
Did you have anything else to say?
I don't.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I have a question. What are you thinking that there's nothing in any of these in the paperwork that I could see, and I could be wrong, about hours of operation. Is that something that didn't need to be put in there because of sun or is there?
Well, it'll be operated under the park hours of operation, which is sun up to sundown. Also, as well within that is, I have signage guidelines from our insurance company. That's just not included in it, but there'll be signage guidelines and everything else to go along with it. So, which will have hours of operation on the side.
Great, thanks.
I like everything in it. I ride that bike path between the community garden and the proposed bike park, and I'm excited to test it out. So excited that we're moving the process forward, and congratulations on all your hard work. It's a lot of work that you guys have accomplished.
Very much.
I guess the other question I have is mainly for staff. This guidebook is extremely, or this, the terms here are extremely comprehensive.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if we actually do that for other volunteer groups.
Yes, we do, especially for the community garden. We do have an MOU, which is basically a license agreement with the Bishop Community Gardeners. Is a volunteer handbook. They receive the exact same handbook, all of that information as well. So,
Is the primary difference just that this we're anticipating minors volunteering than the community garden?
correct.
I don't think they'll even take me as a volunteer.
You're more than welcome. I'm sure they'd love to have you.
No, the community garden.
Oh.
Yeah, Councilmember Mohovy, you're exactly correct. It is lengthy, but we have learned from our past mistakes and other MOUs how to, to make sure that this is done correctly this time and it doesn't increase staff. We don't have enough staff as it is, and then to add features that require a lot more staff. And I want to commend these young men and Matt Schober. We've made them jump through a lot of hoops. They were able to work through them all. And they actually, I would say thank you. And thanks, Matt, for what you guys have done to make this work. I think it'll be a great project and we look forward to being partners in it.
Any other comments?
Definitely a great addition to our community, to the park, and to keep our youth entertaining, doing something healthy. So that's good. Thank you.
The only other thing I would say is over the last month and a half, we've gotten on order 60 to 80
Oh, emails.
emails in support of this.
Yes.
And so all of those names are on public record, and you should reach out to all of those names and make sure they volunteer for the project.
Yeah.
We have a list.
Oh, good.
Good.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion.
The tongue twister.
Oh, let me open it back up. Open up.
It has a lot of peace.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the proposed resolution to approve and execute the license agreement between the Bike Park Group and the City of Bishop by title only, and to approve the proposed volunteer handbook.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, missed that. Who second?
Okay, call for a vote.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Bishop, State of California, approving and authorizing the city administrator to execute the site license agreement with the Bishop Bike Park Group. Councilmember Kong,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Mohovy,
Yes.
Mayor Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
Yay. All right,
Great job,
moving
you guys.
on to future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items?
Not at this time. I just had on here like parking sticker system, but I don't think we need to deal with that
Okay.
until it becomes an issue.
Okay. Karen?
Well, and I just want to say that when I've been here 2 years now, and when I came, I had this whole list of things that I wanted to get done, and our staff and all the people that work for us are just so great that they're just checking things off right and left, and I'm gonna have to think of more stuff.
Great. Okay. Council and committee reports. We can just, Jose, do you want to start?
Sure. Have a lengthy list, so I'll try to be brief. Since our last meeting, I attended the National Night Out, a great event for the community. The City of Bishop Employees Barbecue, again, it was nice to be out there with everybody. Those that were able to attend, somebody had to work. The chamber lunch, first lunch the chamber hosted in more than 2 years. It was nice to see a lot of faces, and they had a nice presentation about the activities that they have done over the last 2 years. I also participated, same as Councilmember Kong, on the March for Reproductive Rights. It was a very nice event. I got to shout something about female rights. And the Shepherders event that was put together by the Friends of the Angel, that was also a nice, very nice event. It was a little bit hot that Saturday evening, but it was a nice event. There's a couple more items. I'll let Councilmember Mahovic elaborate. The LTC meeting was actually just a continuous meeting, very brief meeting, and the fire executive meeting. Busy few weeks.
GA report for the next meeting.
Great. I did not attend as many events as you did, but I did get to go to the barbecue, which was fun. I got to learn that Dan does not like mayonnaise, and I do.
That's why I don't think you care.
And I unfortunately missed the National Night Out because I was getting rained on in the mountains, which was fun, but I was out last week. So that's my report.
I missed the National Night Out because I was visiting family in Florida, which is apparently I was gone for when it was super humid. But that's okay. I didn't miss any humidity because there was plenty back there. And I did go to the Friday nights. The markets have been really fun, and thanks everybody for putting that on. For the Bishop Area Wastewater Authority, we approved the budget for the next year, and we commissioned an analysis of plant flow, how much is flowing into each of the city's water treatment plant and the Eastern Sierra Community Services District. Now that we have the trunk line that actually has a valve that you can direct flow, we need to know that sort of information as we're going forward. And then, yeah, along with Councilmember Garcia, I went to the Fire Executive Commission meeting, and where we got a presentation on that was pretty detailed on the fire out by Manor Market. And the terrifying news about that is about the state of the water districts in our area. So one of the things that I learned from that is that fire hydrants, because that community out there didn't have any fire hydrants, and most of communities in town don't either in the greater Bishop area. In the city of Bishop, they do. But in the outlying areas, a lot of the communities don't have any fire hydrants. And it is the responsibility of the water districts to provide fire hydrants and ensure that they're working. Just in the greater Bishop area, did you know that we have 18 water districts?
Wow, I didn't know how many.
Yes. And so I think that's going to be something that we as a wider community need to start addressing, especially with fire safety being more and more of an issue. And I know that our police chief and our fire department is working diligently on also testing a lot of the, now that we have an officer for that, is working on testing the fire hydrants in the area. Because not only do a lot of streets not have them, but some of the ones that do, they don't actually work. But that's a topic for a future meeting. And we are actually going to be having another meeting next week to start forming a JPA and see what that actually looks like for the fire department and fire district. That's all I have.
I guess Jeff has had his hand raised the whole meeting. I don't know where my phone is, so I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jeff.
Just lower hand.
Hey, everybody. First, I want to apologize for not being able to give my report. As the word may have gotten out, I broke my leg in Alaska and just got home recently, so I didn't have time to repair it. But I raised my hand during Ms. Kovala's report because there were some questions that came up and I wanted to answer them if I could. One is our housing element has not yet been approved. We're still waiting on that, which I think most everybody else is still waiting on that. And the second was Mr. Mahovey's question about the tax on vacant parcels and the recommendation from HCD that came down to Inyo County that we should put that into our report or into our housing element. And I've had some conversations with City Administrator Deshawn about this, and I have asked as many people as I could in the state, and nobody knows what that means. Apparently, there is only one ordinance that's even similar to that anywhere in the state of California, and that's with the city of Oakland. And so I'm trying to track down exactly what that ordinance is. But as far as CSAC and the folks with the state, they have no idea what HCD is talking about with that. If I can find out, I will continue to put effort into it. I will be sure to let the city know, but as of now, I have no more information than we started, other than possibly the city of Oakland tried something like that.
They actually did implement it. And it was a ballot measure that I believe went to the voters, and it was a vacant and abandoned property tax. Yeah.
Okay. So as far as I know, that's the only one in the state of California. So we'll continue to look into it.
Okay, thank you. And sorry for the long time between your hand raised, and luckily it's a
That's
digital
okay.
hand raise.
Just sitting here with my foot in a bucket.
All right. Well, that is it. And we will adjourn this meeting to Monday, August 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. here at the City Council chambers. Thanks. I don't know where my phone is. So I